This is Speaking with the Enemy.
Yes, the show is called Speaking with the Enemy. Louie Butko getting set for the Ticats, taking on the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. And here to discuss is the voice of the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, Derek Taylor, taking over, filling the shoes of the legend of Knuckles. And we all know Knuckles is a legend. We all know Bob Irving, Hall of Famer. But congratulations on this new role, my friend. Could not picture anyone better suited for it. 2 games in, how you feeling about it?
Pretty good. They've given us exciting games, or at least intriguing games to work with, right? And that's kind of all you ask for. They haven't been real pretty, as Jeremiah Masoli racks up over 700 yards of passing against the Bombers. But they've won both, and there's no shortage of stuff to talk about. Had they been winning 30 bagel, it would have been, oh, okay, well, they're amazing. Woohoo. But now there's in-depth and twists and turns to go through. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, I have to think that they're happy they're undefeated and 2-0, but they can't be satisfied with the way that these first 2 games have gone for the Bombers.
Yeah, the first game especially, right? They were, Coach O'Shea will describe it as, hey, we got the win, that's great, but there's stuff that we need to work on. For him, there was less stuff they needed to work on after game 2 than game 1. So it's, at least for one game over the first game, it's forward progress and things are looking better in these areas. So you don't know if that's, for real and it is on an uphill trend or it's just one game over another. But at least for what they've done so far, didn't look great in game number 1. We looked better in game number 2. We won both games against, honestly, a team in the Ottawa Redblacks that looks like it's going to be really good. So I think when we look back at this in 14 weeks or so to go, oh, they took 2 from Ottawa, that's really, really nice.
Yeah, and great games and great to see Zach Collaros and Jeremiah Masoli go toe to toe. And we'll get to Zach because I think, I have a lot of respect for his game and what he's done in his career. But, his numbers so far have been pretty pedestrian, 416 yards, 1 touchdown against 3 picks. Where is he compared to last season? What's been holding him back through these first 2 games? An improved Ottawa defense or just trying to work out the kinks?
I think Ottawa's defense needs a fair bit of credit for that. Like, they really timed up their blitzes quite nicely. And when they stuck with 4, their front 4 wasn't one I thought too much of coming into the season, but seeing them through 2 games against Winnipeg's offensive front, I came away super impressed. Trey Hornbuckle was a total disruptor in that second game. So I think Ottawa's defense needs some love. Collaros, you mentioned 1 touchdown. He had 1 dropped in the end zone. So that's another one. He's also had a couple of interceptions dropped by defenders. So it's been the gunslinger style of Zach Collaros so far this season. It's about what we expected. They got the win. They've sustained long drives. He's still accurate with the football. He likes to throw it into tight spots sometimes that give you nerves, but he knows what he's doing. So you take comfort in that. But I think Zach's been off to a fine start so far. Not amazing, not Nathan Rourke in game number 1 for the BC Lions, amazing, right? But it's been just fine. I think they're very happy with that.
I think Nathan Rourke matched Collaros' season yardage in that first half in that first game. So Nathan Rourke is definitely putting on a show for the rest of the CFL. Greg Ellingson though has been a nice bright spot. 10 receptions, nearing 150 yards through those first 2 games. Him and Zach seem to have found, for guys who have been competitors for so long, Winnipeg, Ottawa, for guys who've gone head to head, they really did find some instant chemistry. How did that combination look through camp and through the first 2 games?
Amazing, like unbelievable. In the first game and through 2 games, you go, okay, well, where does Zach go when he's running out of time? Oh, it's Ellingson. Is Ellingson open? Not really, but it's Greg Ellingson, right? And the thing I don't really get is these 2 guys have not played together since 2014 in Hamilton. And I asked them both, like, have you guys ever worked out together? Like, you're not from the same parts of America, but have you ever worked out together? No, we just came together in camp. And honestly, it's 2 veterans who appear to think about the game in the same way. Coach O'Shea will talk about, they're in film and they're discussing, this here and this is what we'll do here and boot a boop. And they just get it because right from that first game, Zach's on a scramble to his left. Oh, who just happened to pop open near the goalpost? Greg Ellingson, touchdown, spike gets into the crowd, celebrate, good times. Come on. Like it's it's remarkable. It looks like it looks like they've been together for so much longer than 2 weeks plus a training camp that it's an absolute delight for Bomber fans.
Yeah, and you know that chemistry is only going to build as we work our way through an 18-game schedule. Back to Zach for a second, because you and I have both watched him pretty closely throughout his career, and there were questions, when he got that hit from Simone week 1 game. I believe you were at Saskatchewan Ticats, but he got knocked out of that game, and then there was talk about, well, is Zach Collaros always going to be one hit away, that every time he takes contact, you're going to cringe a little bit. He seems to have put that behind him, an MOP last year, and the Ticats very complimentary of what he's able to do. Not the most mobile quarterback, but he can buy himself a few extra seconds. And like you said, just make that creative play, left hand, underhand, shovel pass. He can do it all.
He really can. And you mentioned the head injury from 2019. Yeah, that was literally the third play of the season. Traded to Toronto, then traded to Winnipeg. Boom, boom, Grey Cup. The whole of 2021, I was watching Winnipeg from afar and going, ooh, this kind of hinges on, is Zach healthy? And we don't have a definitive answer to that. Healthy the whole season. Then week 1 of this season, he needs to make a play on the final drive of the game because they're trailing the Red Blacks. He, on 1st and 10, 2nd and 10, scrambles for 12 yards and takes a real nasty hit going down to where the injury spotter pulled him out of the game with like 90 seconds to go. And we all thought, oh boy, he was slow getting up. And is this a thing? And we're all, to some degree, as a Bomber fan, you're kind of waiting for, will it happen again? Right? Because we just get uneasy around concussions and brain injuries. And we just don't know as fans, right, where a guy truly is at. But he was ready to go back into that game. He took every snap at practice that he would normally the week following, and it just builds your confidence of like, oh, okay, that's in the past. We can leave that in the past. I don't know if we can fully leave in the past, but we can leave it in the past. But once again, this season, like on a numbers basis, there are few quarterbacks, and I don't think right now there are any that are better from keeping pressure from turning into sacks than Zach Collaros. For his career, it's like 11% of the time he's under pressure, he turns it into a sack. And it's without being the greatest athlete in the world, but his awareness of where he is in space and where his receivers are down the field is probably second to none in this league.
One of the big storylines around this Bombers team this past offseason was moving on from Andrew Harris. And, I'm sure we can debate for hours on how they handled it or how both sides are coming out of it. But they made a decision to move on from Andrew Harris because they were confident in the guys they have. And to be fair, what we've seen through the first 2 games, pretty solid numbers, especially early on in the season, 60 yards, 50 yards, I believe Augustine and Oliveira have. Is that their plan? Is it a 1-2 punch they want to roll with all season? Or do you think one guy will eventually maybe rise to the top?
I think since they'll probably, and this is my guess, the first 2 games carried both guys on the roster. My feeling is they'd love to carry 2 guys on the roster for the whole season. And last week we saw Oliveira, I believe, was 14 carries, and Augustine had risen to 7 carries, right? So a 2-to-1 ratio, and both guys had production in different ways. I think that's my guess is that's their plan. They won't tell us their plan, right? But my belief is if you have 2 guys that can contribute and can do so from the same position in slightly different ways, why would you not take advantage of that, right? It doesn't have to be a one-horse town, as it were. We saw for the first time this past week, both guys show up in formation at the same time. And you think, oh, okay, well, what could Buck Pierce, the offensive coordinator, do with a little of that? So my impression, it's been Brady Oliveira number 1 at camp, at practice all season long. He's been number 1 in every game. But Augustine's a number 2. And when they opened up a crease for him it was actually a pretty big hole. When they opened up a big hole for him in the Ottawa game at Ottawa, boom, 24 yards, first down. Oh, okay. We need some of that. So let's just keep that around. Keep that in our pocket.
Johnny Augustine, I will let our listeners know, a former one-time high school classmate of mine at Notre Dame High School in Welland, Ontario. So I wanted to get that shout out in for our friends at Welland, Ontario, where also Chris Van Zyl played his high school ball. So a little connection there. The kicking game has been a conversation for this Bombers team for a couple of seasons now. They're going with Legio, and for everything, for all 3 aspects of the kicking game, That's a lot of kicking to put on one guy, especially with a lot of pressure in a city like Winnipeg. But he seems to have done an admirable job through the first 2 games.
4 of 4 on field goals, 1 of 3 on converts. Guess which one we're focusing on as Bomber fans?
The converts.
Yeah, exactly. So if you follow me on Twitter at DT on OB, I'll put out kicker. It's basically how many points was a kicker supposed to get based on the kicks you asked him to make, right? Because if you ask him to kick a 50-yarder and you ask him to kick a 20-yarder and you go, well, he missed one and he made the other. Well, yeah, those are dramatically different kicks that are made at different rates. So Leggio for the season is about 1.2 points below what you would expect from an average kicker. And it's based off those convert misses, right? If you're supposed to make them 90% of the time and you don't, okay. The good point for me is that they were converts, right? They weren't field goals that he missed. So I go to the base, it was 1 point and not 3 points. And at no point has it been crippling to them. There's a confidence thing in there that kickers have to have that I could never possibly sustain. And you just go, it's 32 yards, just bap it through the uprights and let's move on. It's almost, we feel like it should just be predetermined, but it's just been, wide a couple of times. I honestly, just from his college career, I have a ton of confidence in Mark Leggio. His punting in game number 1 was phenomenal. His kickoffs in the preseason were better than his kickoffs have been thus far. But I feel like they would love it to be Leggio for all 3 for the full season, to the point where they only brought back Ali Mortada from last season. They haven't gone to market or that we know tried to recruit one of the guys who's in the NFL circles right now, Hyralahu or Maher or anybody like that. I think they'd like it to be Leggio, and I think he's got it. I honestly think he does. So I have high hopes for him and looking for what he can do against Hamilton on Friday.
Do you get the sense that kickers are over scrutinized in football? Because because the one thing, when you have a kicker who misses a kick and you talk to their teammates after the game and say that was one play that wasn't made, because we talk about dropped interceptions or dropped touchdowns, or those plays do not get the scrutiny that a missed convert or a missed field goal sometimes get. Do we over scrutinize kickers in this league and in football in general?
Yeah, because we have this perception of, well, you've only got one job to do. How can you not do the one thing you're being paid to do? Come on. Yeah, it's absolutely unfair. And we kind of use the wrong metrics to look at it, right? People will go to, well, Mark Leggio was only 5 of 8 last year on field goals. That's 63%. That's a bad number. And then I go, well, do you know his average field goal attempt last year was 10 yards further than the average CFL field goal attempt? The average field goal attempt in the league last year was 35 yards. Leggio's average attempt last year was 45 yards down. But when you send out the kicker from 45, as a fan, you go, this probably goes in, but if it doesn't, I get it. And that's first kick off the bench, his entire career. Go make one from 50, Mark. And he made one from 50. So we've seen it with him. And yeah, we are totally unfair with our kickers, but it's because we just don't see them very often. And we think of the best ones, right? Here, Justin Medlock, Ottawa, Lewis Ward has been rock solid. Rene Paredes is going to the Hall of Fame one day in Calgary, right? That's a hard life. It's a hard life.
And kickers are always great people, and they always have great attitudes. And I always love chatting with them on the sidelines, because you do have a lot of time to chat with kickers at practice on the sidelines, because, unless they're doing special teams days. Before I let you go, DT, I want to get your thoughts on the Ticats. They have an 0-2 start to the season, got significantly better from game 1 to game 2, from the O-line to the receivers making their catches. But game didn't go the way they wanted it to. Outside perspective, what have you seen from the Ticats so far in their 0-2 start?
Turnovers are just crushing them, right? Like 4 interceptions. Dane's got 4 fumbles, 3 that he's lost. I don't know about the Titus Wall one that went for a touchdown. I don't know. That one seemed, I get what the CFL sees on that one, but I'm not sure I'm in love with it, because we're trying to protect quarterbacks and it looked like he had it. So even if you discount that one, it's still a lot of turnovers or turnover worthy plays in the first few weeks. And then watching the Calgary game, I was doing it till about 3 a.m. last night. And it appeared to be a lot of one read bang, one read bang, one read bang. And then, here's a deep shot and an amazing catch by Tim White for a touchdown. I think I'm curious to see what it looks like if a team forces Dane to stretch the ball a little more. I think I have his average depth of target being 6 yards, and the league average is 9.5 or so. Right, so it's been constantly short stuff underneath with a sprinkling of the deep stuff that can go well or can go the one he targeted for Braylon Addison going left to right last week. I've never been the biggest Dane Evans guy. I'm still waiting to see it. And he, in a team that does not appear to really want to run the ball through the running back, they'd rather throw it. I admire a team that wants to throw it so much, but there needs to be a little extra for my taste for Dane. And Addison is obviously a top level receiver in this league. Steven Dunbar, man, the way he took Nick Marshall to the house in week 1, like, oh, okay, well that's lingering out there. That's a top 5, top 10 yardage receiver in the CFL. Okay. The Whites. Oh, we're going to run Tim White from running back or Pappy White from running back. They have the real opportunity to mess with teams. So I don't think 0-2 is necessarily deserved based on how they've played. Dane's got to protect the ball better for me, or else the game with Winnipeg could just get totally out of hand with that defense.
Well, on that positive note, for Ticats fans, thanks, DT. Appreciate this as always.
Carrie L. Brooks for the win, though.
There you go.
Micah Johnson was trucking some people in that Calgary game, man. He looks just the same as he did last year. That's a real force on the inside.
Tunde Adalke in that safety spot. We talked about him a lot this week. 10 tackles last week with that sack, and then those tackles that don't show up on the score sheet where you knock the ball right out of guys' hands, and you get a couple of those as well. So should be a fun one. Hopefully it's a fun one. If you see Paul Friesen down there at walkthrough, can you give him a hard time for making me read his last article where he went detail by detail by detail into that last interception at the Grey Cup, because that was painful to read and I was trying to do all my prep this week. So just give him a hard time for me today, because that one was tough to read today.
Will do.
This has been Speaking with the Enemy. DT, appreciate it as always.
Thanks, buddy.
I'm Louie Butko for the Ticats Audio Network.